listeners, and welcome to Pop Screen, part of the Geek Show Podcast Network. We are that part of the Geek Show that's dedicated to the good, the bad, and the inexplicable of movies, either by, starring, or about pop stars. No, the podcast covers such a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I write for the Geek Show and Horrified.com, the British horror website, and I've been joined this week by...
Gav Smith.
Hey, Gav. Where can people find you?
Me, you'll find me at my podcast, which is my favorite film podcast. What was that? www.myfavoritefilm.com. All of your podcasts, wherever you want to find us, you'll find my favorite film. I also write for the Geek Show every now and again, although very sporadically at the moment. I've got a couple to do for you, actually. But yeah.
Oh, right. Nice.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
I've completely lost track of all live since Rob started handling the distribution for discs.
Something I want to talk to you about later, so we'll do that off air.
Interesting, exciting. Right.
Exciting work, yeah.
Normally, I'm very hard taskmaster on the Pop Screen podcast, and I will have a list of films that I want to cover, and I will force the often unwilling co-hosts I speak to cover them with me. But this time, I just got tired trying to persuade people that Metallica, some kind of monster, is actually a really interesting documentary, something I have yet to achieve. And I decided to go with your suggestion, Gav, that we should do. But this is the first and probably last film distributed on Laserdisc that we're going to do.
Do you want me to tell you about it?
Please do, because I've watched it and I'm still not sure what it is.
Well, back in 1987 or so, a little band formed called ABC. A great band, proper 80s band. I mean, they were, I think Lexicon of Love is still down as one of the great pop songs or pop albums of the 80s. You can argue about that as much as you like, but it's got some absolutely banging tracks on it, and everyone knows. Certainly songs like Look of Love, All of My Heart, Poison Arrow, they're all on there. You know, these are songs that everyone knows, regardless of what age you are, you probably still know them. So ABC created a film in order to try and promote Lexicon of Love. I don't know if it works as a promotion for Lexicon of Love or the band, because it doesn't show the band in the best light other than Martin Fry. The rest of them all seem to be pretty much bad guys in this film. So that's what Mantrap is. And I mentioned it to you because I was in the car driving to work. I have a long drive to work, and I put Lexicon of Love on. I was listening to the album, and I just kind of remembered about the film and thought, well, I'm doing a recording with them anyway. I'll have a chat. So yeah, it's an interesting film.
I'd question that, but let's go on. Yeah. So ABC, like I say, they're a band who everyone knows at least some songs of. I've just never been into that kind of 80s synth pop stuff. Bar a couple of bands. I like the Pet Shop Boys, but that's about it.
We see. I think we've got a bit of a difference in age.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. ABC was pretty much, at the end of my teenage years. I was 16, 17 at the time that this was coming out. So I heard this stuff all the time. I knew about it. It was what I was growing up on. So it's the kind of music that I grew up on. In fact, was it 80? Was this 83? I'm thinking 87 or something, but I think it was actually 83, wasn't it?
This film is 83.
Yeah. So yeah, I was 12, 13. I was probably peak time for this type of music. This was what was on Top of the Pops when I was a kid.
You know what I was doing in 83?
Go on.
I was being born.
There you go.
Yeah, so...
There's the difference between us. That's why I've heard of this stuff and you haven't. But yeah,
that might be it. Yeah.
Teenage years, this is what was on Top of the Pops every week. These are the songs that I sort of grew up listening to. And because of that, bit of an ABC fan. So, and I think I saw this probably on VHS for the first time when it came out, because I don't think it got a cinematic release. It was just something they released as a novelty film that went along with the album.
And it was accompanying the Lexicon of Love, right? That was the right. Okay, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have all of the songs from Lexington Lover on it. It's basically
Mm.
got the songs that became the singles from the album on it.
Yeah.
Along with a fantastic jazz version of Poison Arrow.
Yes, that was quite a nice surprise, actually.
Yeah. Which I think did get re-released then as, you know, the theme from Mantrap.
Right.
Which is it's probably the best version of Poison Arrow out there. Actually, it's better than the normal pop version that you'll hear. If you can ever find theme from Mantrap instead of Poison Arrow, it's a much better version of the song. It's nice jazz type piano going, and it just sounds completely different. So it's a nice version.
They should have released it as that. Poison Arrow, open brackets, nice version, close brackets.
Nice version. Yeah. I think that's probably the best way of any jazz. It's just nice, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
The whole thing with it. So, this film is therefore this weird oddity of a film because it's, as you say, it was released on Laserdisc as well, apart from anything else. And certainly the version that I know I gave you to look at on YouTube is copied directly from the Laserdisc.
Yeah, because I found out it was on Laserdisc when it gets part of the way through and it says sort of end of side one. And I think, what the fuck? What's that?
Yeah. Back in the days of Laserdisc, you got a two-sided disc get turned over halfway through the film.
A wonder that format never took off, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't understand why it didn't take off, really. I really can't. Yeah. But it was released on VHS as well, and you then got the whole film in one go, which obviously was so much better. Just watch it.
And it is one of those things which we've dealt with sometimes on Pop Screen. And I know you mentioned to me when you originally mentioned this film to me, it is one of those films that puts you back at a time when no one was quite sure how far you could take a music video. You know, when does it stop being a music video and start being a film?
Yes. Yeah. And that's what this is. I mean, if you've ever seen the video for Poison Arrow, that is basically the style of this film. And that's where that video comes from. It comes from mainly from parts from this film.
Right.
But the other videos, I guess, are not. A lot of the film is live performance. It's a showcase for ABC doing live performance effectively, although they're miming along to their own recorded songs. But it's just doing something to try and do something different, I suppose, in that whole video genre, that it's not just music videos, it's something a little bit different, and try and get the actors to, or the members of the band to do a little bit of acting, although they don't do acting very well, has to be said. I think actually only Martin Fry is who's the lead singer, is actually trying to act. The rest of them basically just say a couple of words now and again, and that's it.
Yeah, I was going to sort of ask you about that. Were ABC one of those bands where there was any notable interband tension? Because if I was one of the non-Martin Fry people in ABC, I would feel pretty pissed off about this.
Well, I believe the story was written by Martin Fry and Steve Singleton, who is one of the other members. There's then Dave Palmer and Mark White. After this album, I think Steve left the band,
right,
because of differences with Martin Fry. It was then left as being Dave, Mark, and Martin, and then after that, it was left to just Mark and Martin. And I think nowadays, and they got a couple of other members in. I think nowadays it's pretty much Martin Fry is ABC.
Right.
So any new albums, I think, because he did do a Lexicon of Love Part 2 very recently.
Yes.
And it is now just Martin Fry. He is ABC.
Right.
He tours as ABC, but it is literally him and then a band that come along for the ride effectively. But it's none of the original members. They're all gone.
That is one of those things which I always find fascinating, but I always feel a bit daunted going into on Pop Screen, where you have bands that just stay touring forever, but with a fraction of their original membership. But I think it's sort of funny when it happens, but you have to be very deep into a band's lore to know all those personnel changes and competing versions. I guess what I'm saying is I wish this was yet another Beach Boys podcast I was doing, because I could ace that stuff then.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not. I couldn't give you the lineup for each of the different albums. I know that they changed between every single album pretty much, but I think there was certainly a point where Martin Fry and Mark White were ABC, and all the other ones that come in at other points during the time were just people that had played on those albums. And I think then Mark White got bored as well, and it just left it Martin Fry to do everything on his own. And he's still making money from ABC, so why not?
Yeah. So
He's
speaking of someone like me who couldn't like tell any of the non-Martin Fry members of ABC if they walked in front of me right now.
Yeah.
They are, I guess, the people who come up to Martin Fry after he's been duffed up at the start.
He does get beaten up, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the weird thing about it, that the three members of ABC who hire Martin Fry are then the three members who are no longer part of ABC, and Martin Fry is the one that's left. So the three of them, basically, we've got this European tour. You can come on it as long as you can sing. They are the other members of the band.
It's quite a big chance to take, isn't it? Getting someone to be your lead singer on a European tour where the only time you've seen them is when they're being beaten up by people. That's your evidence that they can sing. They presumably went in a particularly melodious way.
It was. I remember. Do you remember hearing that? No, I mean, to not spoil it too much for everybody, but I guess we're going to spoil it because we do. The whole point is that Martin Fry happens to look like this Russian gentleman called, I think it's Tad, they call him at the end, who looks just like Martin Fry. And they've found this lookalike in London. And the idea is, if they can get him on the tour, they can swap places and get the guy out of Russia. That's the whole point of picking on Martin.
Right. I have
Did you not
to
admit
that? I lost the ability to follow the plot after a certain point.
Right. Well, that's the basic plot. So the basic plot, we start with Lisa Vanderpump, who obviously plays Samantha, who's probably better known now for, is it Housewives of Beverly Hills?
Endless series of reality shows. I mean,
absolutely.
Just a Marvel Cinematic Universe rivaling string of spin-offs and different shows. Incredible.
Yeah.
There were thousands of them.
This is one of her early acting roles, and she can kind of act. Compared to everybody else in it, she can act.
Well, she had a few sort of notable roles.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Before this, she was in A Touch of Class with Glenda Jackson and George Segal. She was in Killer's Moon, which is a very unremarkable slasher film, which is notable, I think, for one absolutely bizarre fact, that it has dialogue written by an uncredited Faye Weldon.
Wow, there you go. Didn't know that. Right.
So that she can say she's acted. She's delivered Faye Weldon's dialogue.
Yes.
Not in Life and Loves of a She-Devil or anything like that, but she's done it.
She's done it. Yeah. I mean, she's certainly can act in this. And then there's James Villas, who plays Tony Walmsley, who is the manager. Again, people will know him. He's British actor. He's well known for playing these villain type roles. He pops up on screen. You'll go, oh yeah, I know him.
He's got a remarkable voice, hasn't he?
Oh yes, very British.
Yes,
very of a certain genre of British actor that just sounds that way, and that's a villain. As soon as he starts talking, he's a villain. You know he is.
Yes.
I mean, that's it. There's 6 people in this thing from a point of view of credited actors, which is the 4 members of the band and then those 2. And everybody else is just bit parts that occasionally you see in, party scenes or whatever else, or pointing cameras at Martin Fry.
Yeah.
But the basic story goes that they've got this guy they want to get out of Russia. So they duff up Martin Fry in order to get him to join the band. And it just so happens that he can sing, which is
stroke of luck.
Absolute stroke of luck. So they get him in the next day to sing, and there you go. There's the words. We're going to play the music. Can you sing along? and he just happens to be able to read the words perfectly and sing perfectly in tune with the song straight away. And we go into a Rocky style montage where we get changing costumes, and suddenly they're in gold lame suits on the stage to a sellout audience.
Yes, it did remind me pleasantly of. Have you ever seen that film Frank? With
Yes.
the bit where Donald Gleason's character John manages to get a place in Michael Fassbender's band because he's there when the former keyboardist attempts suicide.
Yeah.
And that's seen as being like qualification enough.
Yeah. That's all you need is qualification. You just happen to be nearby. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what this is. You got beaten up at the right place, so they get him on the band. Yeah. Yeah.
If only it were that easy.
Yeah, if only that's how you could get to rock stardom, just by being beaten up near a club where a band who happened to be looking for a singer happened to be playing. There you go. But that's how Martin Fry became famous, everybody.
Yes. Yeah, I assume this is a documentary, right?
I assume so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it must be, mustn't it? Yeah.
Because it's made by Julian Temple, who has never had a problem with falsifying the facts or printing the legend ever, has he?
Never. Never. In fact, I believe every film he's ever made has been a documentary and absolutely accurate. There you go.
There is always a threat with Pop Screen that I joke about that it just becomes a show where we review Julian Temple films, because really they all qualify, don't they?
Pretty much. Yeah, I think everything he's done's got a pop star in it of some sort, hasn't it? So
yes, yeah.
You could just do a whole series of episodes that are just Julian Temple. Definitely.
You absolutely could. Yeah.
In fact, you probably have already, have you not?
We've done a couple. We've done Crock of Gold, his recent his actual documentary about Shane McGowan, and we've done Absolute Beginners.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Which
full of pop stars.
That's full of pop stars, and it shares this film's visual tick of having shadows that aren't even shadows; they're just lots of blue.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of that in this, isn't there? Yeah.
He's a guy I find fascinating.
Yes.
And Temple had also done another of those films around this time that sort of sits on the borderline between music video and short film, which is David Bowie's Jazzin' for Blue Jean.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think I've seen that a couple of times.
It's an odd one, that. It's like, it's very much in his early 80s mode of, hey, I'm just a normal bloke. All of that gay Martian stuff was just me dicking around. But it is actually pretty creative and funny and worth digging out.
Yeah. It's a good. He did. I mean, Julian Temple. If you look at his filmography on something like IMDb, it's just massive, isn't it? You know, he's done so much stuff.
Yeah.
Most of them are just one-off videos. He did an awful lot of one-off videos with people, but and he's worked with everyone, pretty much. You know, you name them, he's probably worked with them at one time or another, from a music point of view. But yeah, Jazz and Blue Jean was a good one.
Yeah, and he had a sort of period in the mid to late 80s where he seemed to be about to break through to like wider Hollywood, but it didn't really happen. And in recent years, he's been doing mostly music documentaries, which is a kind of a canny move, really, because there seems to be this insatiable hunger for music documentaries on British television, and he's exploited that to keep producing work that is really personal and distinctive. I mean, I think The Ecstasy of Wilko Johnson, the film he made about, obviously, Wilko Johnson, the guitarist from Dr. Feelgood, is incredible. A really emotional, really beautiful film.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, probably the thing that knocked him out was doing Earth Girls Are Easy, wasn't it? That was probably the thing that stopped him making it anywhere in proper films.
I mean, Absolute Beginners did not go down the storm for reasons that we pick over on the episode we did on that. But yeah, Earth Girls Are Easy. What the fuck was all that about?
I mean, some fantastic faces there. You know, Jeff Goldblum in there, Gina Davis. It's fantastic actors,
Yeah.
but it's like it was never going to be a hit. But yeah, he's an interesting director. He's made some very interesting films, and he's worked with so many different people.
Yeah.
He's done so many music videos with so many different people. But yeah, documentary seems to be where he's kind of hit a niche market, I suppose, that he does music documentaries and he does them well. So people
Yeah.
want to see what he's doing. So
I
yeah.
mean, he has a sort of, he has an advantage that other people doing music documentaries don't have, which is like in the Shane McGowan documentary I mentioned that we'd done before, there is loads of amazing footage of McGowan at early Sex Pistols gigs.
Yeah.
And you think that is such an archive find. Where did he get that? And he got that from his own home movie archive, of course, because he was there.
Yeah, because he was there at the time and he made those videos, and he's done it. So yeah, he's lucky, I suppose, in that way that he's been videoing pop stars for so long. He probably has got a back catalogue of documentary footage he could put together and make a documentary on pretty much anyone.
Yeah,
from that type of scene. I'm sure he could probably do one on the Sex Pistols as well, having
he has
spent enough time there. Yeah, so yeah, loads of stuff.
Yeah. But this is kind of glossy commercial Eva Temple. Yes. This is very, I think the French called it cinema du look, which is, I guess, a word for a movie what looks good. They're so abstract and theoretical, those French critics. I don't know what they're talking about most of the time.
No, I mean, the ABC sold themselves as being a luxurious band. I mean, they literally, their suits were gold lame. Everything they did, they were dressed in gold. Yeah, that was kind of the look they went for. They had the perfect hair and whatever else, and they came on and they sang these perfect songs. And that's exactly what this film is trying to tap into, is that this is a luxurious band kind of image. You don't see much of the band. They somehow managed to become meteoric rise to fame even before they had Martin Fry as their lead singer. They managed to put out an album within the space of weeks and then go on a European tour, which is a fairly impressive thing to do. Yes. But you've got all this sort of the big songs that people would know from ABC's sort of first album are there. You start with Show Me is on there, Many Happy Returns, you get The Look of Love, All of My Heart. So there's loads of the big sort of songs that they were known for at the time are all on here, and all with this same sort of look. Most of them are concert footage, I guess. Yeah, is the way they're shot as concert footage. Yeah, but the concert footage is the whole point of this film, because there's a story behind the film and all the concert footage that you couldn't grasp. And I don't know how, because we've only got an hour's long running time. There's not a lot of story there.
Yeah, it gets completely overwhelmed by the concert footage to me. And I suppose if you are an ABC fan, you can probably pick it up more easily because you're very tuned in to the concert footage because you're enjoying the music. But I drifted away from it very easily, I must admit.
Yeah. Well, there's Samantha, who is played by Lisa, is basically has another lover somewhere who looks exactly like Martin Fry. So she is trying to seduce Martin Fry in order to be part of the band. And she gives him very importantly, she gives him an arrow-shaped tie pin. Very important that she gives him this arrow-shaped tie pin. He says he'll keep it with him always. They're videoing or they're shooting film footage of the band playing, they're recording the band playing, and they're sending it somehow to Russia, to this other Martin Fry who's in Russia, who is then using the footage and the sounds to become just like Martin Fry and sing like him, to look like him, and so on. I think he looked a bit like him already, but his hair the same and learns his mannerisms so he can take on the role of Martin Fry at some point in the future.
You then just get... This is a Cold War allegory.
It is, absolutely. This is a spy film. It's a Cold War film. It's trying to get people to get out of Russia because they don't want to be there. It's got everything going for it. This one, it really has, just not very well. And as I said, I don't know what to say, but it's not a great film. And I don't want anyone to think that I think this is a great Oscar-winning film, because it's not. If you like ABC, if you like the album Lexicon of Love, you'll enjoy this film just for the music. And there is a nice little story going behind it somewhere that you kind of go, oh, that's quite a nice little story. There's something happening. I can get my teeth into that a little bit. There is something happening there.
Yeah.
And brilliantly, it's only got an hour's runtime. It's not very long.
It's true.
And it's freely available on YouTube. So, if you like a bit of ABC, you can always just have a watch, and it's there. It's only take an hour of your time. You'd be all right.
I will say this for the band, because I think I've made it pretty clear that kind of early 80s high pop is just not my scene, my scene at all. But I will say, even as an outsider, I can sort of appreciate that there is something more vulnerable about ABC that I think is interesting. Like people like Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet, their image is kind of bulletproof. They are they are aiming to look like the coolest, most confident, most successful, sexiest people on the planet. ABC, for all they do have that glamorous image you mentioned in the gold lame suits, I also think you don't write a song like Poison Arrow if you're trying to present yourself as ultra slick and unruffled by life,
Yeah. Well, even, Look of Love, that there's so much to that song as well. It's not they weren't the traditional pop songs of the time. They were slightly different. As you say, I think vulnerability is probably a good word for it, because they did always present themselves looking exactly the same. That was their thing. That's how they looked. Duran Duran changed their image from song to song, and they looked slightly different and whatever else. But ABC were always there as these smart, very now suits where this is us. Take us like this. So,
yeah. They never had that sort of Duran Duran wild boys phase where they looked like they could really injure you from laughing at them.
Definitely. But you see, that's another one you could do. You could do Duran Duran's concert video of Arena, which I don't know if you've ever seen it, where they riff on Barbarella and they have Dr. Duran Duran coming back to Earth after many years of hearing his name being chanted through the airwaves from Earth, to find that actually it's not him, it's Duran Duran. And it's an interesting thing. They intersperse it with clips of Barbarella during it, and that's where the Wild Boys video comes from.
Yes.
Which is obviously Dr. Duran has now caught Duran Duran and is torturing them by spinning them in a windmill in water, because that's what you do.
Yeah, I remember that visual. It's the one moment where the Wild Boys starts to feel a bit like an adaptation of the William S. Burroughs novel of the same title, isn't it? It's still got that kind of also erotic asphyxia fascination to it.
Yeah, but that's that was the time when people were doing lots of stuff like that. The 80s was a time where people made music videos that were hugely long, that were overcomplicated, that in order to sell an album you had to have a film, or you had to have a concert tour footage that would go along with it, and it would be perfect, and every band was doing that, because VHS was selling as much as CD or vinyl at that point. So if you didn't have a VHS to go along with your vinyl or your CD, you were going to get nowhere. You had to have a visual medium. MTV had taken off massively, even in the UK. Everyone had to have a video. So it became this thing that cinema and music became so closely linked that the likes of Julian Temple managed to make a business out of it.
It was always either, in my experience, it was always either Julian Temple or David Mallis doing these things. They sort of, I guess, probably because most more established directors did not understand the music video as a form.
Apart from maybe John Landis.
Apart from maybe John Landis. Yeah, John Landis famously had a bit of success with these things, didn't he? Yeah.
Just a little bit. What was that one? A werewolf in it.
Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon. I remember it now.
I mean, that's what this film is just about. That, and there's the wonderful double cross bit at the end, which is that eventually Martin Fry's character, after being drugged, meets up with his lookalike and has a wonderful fight in the rafters of the concert hall. Two gold lame suits going at it with their blonde flicky hair.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of them wins, but who wins? And the question's left posed to viewer as to which one you believe has won this fight.
Yes, I quite liked that, because after a whole like 45 minutes of these non-more slick cinema de look 80s visuals, suddenly you're reminded that this is definitely like pre-CGI, pre-dead ringers. It's when you had to find someone who was roughly the right height and build for Martin Fry, put a wig on him, and just hope he doesn't like fake being hit so badly that he turns to the camera. That's how you do it.
It's a great fight scene, and you know it works. There's a wonderful bit where he kind of jumps off the stairs and manages to kick himself squarely in the chest. And they go down, and you know, at the end, one of them gets up and walks away. And we see him being greeted then the next day by everyone going, "Hey, it's Dad, he's okay." And we have a little camera peers down, and there's that arrow tie pin is there on his tie. The other Martin is then by the side of the river, and he does that whole scream thing. And there is a sly wink to the camera from the Martin that is bedding Lisa towards the end. So is it Martin or is it Tad? Who knows? To this day, we don't know. Maybe Martin Fry is not Martin Fry after all. He is a Russian imposter.
Maybe it's a whole Paul is dead thing. Has he appeared barefoot on the cover of any ABC albums?
I don't think. I think that the album cover for Skyscraping, he is definitely walking upstairs towards heaven. So maybe that's something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe there is something in that. Maybe he is dead after all. I don't know.
I mean, it's such a mad indulgence to give a double role to someone in a film where the nearest thing to a professional actor is Lisa Vanderpump.
You know, but why not? He does it well. He plays himself incredibly well. Both as his lookalike and as himself. He plays himself brilliantly. He is the most convincing Martin Fry I have seen on television or on film ever.
Yes, that's a fair point. I suppose if you expanded that to radio, you'd have to include Joe Cornish's Martin Fry impersonation that he did on the Adam and Joe 6 Music show, where they were doing 80s songs one week. I don't know if he could win that battle. I think Joe Cornish might still be my favourite Martin Fry.
You think Joe Cornish's Martin Fry is better than Martin Fry's Martin Fry?
I think, he's got more conviction to it.
Do you know that there's possibly something in that? There's possibly something in that, but I'm not sure. Because,
Joe Cornish's incredible 80s song.
Joe Cornish's David Bowie is more David Bowie than David Bowie as well. So, you know, maybe there's something in that. Maybe Joe Cornish should just be all 80s pop stars.
Yeah, we should just get him to sub in for them. I agree.
Yeah. He could do it.
Begins with the couplet, "When the world is like a big potato and you're feeling like you've had your chips," and you just think, well, that's it, isn't it? You've won the battle.
Yeah, true. Maybe we're giving too much to Martin on this one.
Maybe, yeah.
Anyway, that's the film. You know, there's not a lot to it. That has to be said. It is basically the singles from the album, with a little bit of a dodgy Cold War story going on, and a double cross story going on, and a lucky likey story going on, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
But it's an interesting odyssey, like I say, it's of that era. I still think in terms of stuff that we've done that are on that kind of music video film borderline from that era for the show, I still think my favourite one, and it's also probably because I like the music more, I grant you, but the Pet Shop Boys film, It Couldn't Happen Here.
Yeah.
Which I think is terrific.
Yeah, it is brilliant. It's the same type of ilk as this, you know, it's two guys who can't act, acting their way through a film of their own songs and their
Yeah.
own making, and it's beautifully put together. But again, it's just another one of those indulgences, isn't it? That
Completely.
where does our music video stop and our film begin, or the other way around?
And I think the original funding for it couldn't happen here was something that it was meant to be a concert film,
Yeah.
but for various reasons they couldn't do it that year, so they needed to do something with the
Something
money.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they made a film, and it's a great film. It's
Yeah.
got a lot going for it.
I'm very fond of it.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree. You know, it does everything that a film of that type should do.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think what killed it, because obviously music videos are still here, and you can look at things like Beyonce's Lemonade most famously and say, oh, that's a descendant of this style. That's doing the same sort of thing. But they did become very unfashionable for a long time.
I think there's several things. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think have killed the music industry as such. YouTube is partially to blame, I think.
Yeah.
You know, you get a medium where so much video is up there every single day. You know, there's more hours uploaded onto YouTube every second than you could possibly watch.
Yeah.
And then also the whole streaming thing, you know, the fact that you don't have to wait for a single coming out anymore. You just buy the one song off the album that you like, and you buy any song you like off the album. You don't have to buy the album. You don't have to wait for it coming out. You can just get whatever music you like. The likes of Spotify, even things like that, that the music you want to listen to is available freely. So why should you worry about music videos? You know, we haven't got Top of the Pops either.
Yeah.
You know, the whole point of most music videos back in the day was because Top of the Pops, if you wanted to be on, you had to appear on stage.
Yeah.
Or you'd have Pan's people dancing to your song. So the likes of Queen came up and went, do you know what? We're going to create a thing called the music video. And then instead of having Pan's people dance to our song, you can play our music video. And then everyone else went, that's a good idea. Maybe we could do that as well. And suddenly you've got music videos.
I've never thought of the music video as a specific way to make Pan's people unemployed, but now you mention it, that's basically it, isn't it? Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Freddie Mercury didn't like Pan's people. So he went about purposely destroying their career by creating the music video, and that's it. That is fact.
You don't want to know what Pan's people did to cross Freddie Mercury. It's a dark story that
it's a very dark story.
They rightly ignored. Yeah,
they didn't tell that in Bohemian Rhapsody. Definitely not. I really wish they had, because that is the story. That's the untold truth.
Yes.
One day, Julian Temple will make that film.
There's two things I can think of. I mean, those are two excellent choices for a long-term trend that stopped this happening. But I think there are two things that meant for a while this trend towards extended music videos and visual albums stayed in the 80s for a long time. First thing is, the first big trend you get, certainly in the States at least, after the 80s ends, is grunge, which is basically all of the underground alternative bands who thought that MTV stuff was bullshit back in the 80s are suddenly in the mainstream now. So, you know, Nirvana, they're not going to make a visual album. REM are not going to do a film where, you know, Peter Buck pretends to be a Russian gangster or something.
True.
So there's that.
Then you say Nirvana wouldn't make that, but then Dave Grohl, now with Foo Fighters, he's made Studio 666. So, you know, it's...
I think you don't do it when you're young and trying to be cool.
You do it when you're older and you go, you know what, we don't care anymore.
I've always wanted to be in a horror movie. What the hell? What have I got to lose?
I'll make my own.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing too is that the first example of this happening in the 90s would be when Madonna released Justify My Love as a VHS single, because it was too explicit to be played on MTV. And that correctly struck people as a very shrewd way of getting people to pay a remarkable amount of money for a 5-minute long VHS and frame it as like an act of almost charity towards your fans. And I don't think the scene could really survive that. No.
I think, well, I mean, that particular video, it was It was shown very late at night to Channel 4 again. I think we mentioned Channel 4 late at night before.
We did.
I think
yeah.
that was another episode, another time.
Yes.
So again, the likes of Channel 4 managed to show stuff like that. And then the only other way of getting it was, as you said, to buy it on VHS. Even Thriller had that. The only way of seeing the whole 15-minute version was to buy it.
Yeah.
After Channel 4 had shown the whole 15-minute version in this country. And then if you're watching it on telly, normally it was the cut down version, which was just the song. So yeah.
It's something about it being a whole VHS. I think it's because they take up space. I think there's a reason why binge watching seasons did not start to become a thing until DVD was well established, because you remember what a whole season worth of television looked like on VHS. You had to build an extra wing to your house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did normally put like 2 episodes on a tape, wouldn't they? So an American series that runs 26 episodes, you've got 13 VHS tapes to make one series. If you were binge watching Breaking Bad for 5-6 seasons of that, that's gonna be a lot of VHS, isn't it?
Yes.
As you say, that is an extra wing to the house just to fit that in somehow. So yeah. That's why we have YouTube and Netflix.
Exactly.
You don't need any space for them at all.
So the time's come round for it a bit, I think. I'm still not quite sure that this whole visual album thing has become its own format yet. I still watch them and think it's a bit like a film, but it's not quite a film, but it's not quite a music video. And it's...
Yeah, I think this one's got its merits in that it is trying to be a film. And I think it is just trying to be a film. It's not actually a film. They're trying to make some sort of story in there that you kind of go, oh yeah, there's a storyline. It's not just concert footage. There's something else. But it's basically just concert footage with a little bit in between to link one song to the next song.
I think the fact that it's concert footage probably helps it, really. I mean, certainly if you're an ABC fan, then you've probably already got the lexicon of love. And watching Martin Fry duff up a stunt double dressed as Martin Fry, fun though it is, would probably not coax you out to get it. But when you're getting, as you say, these live versions of songs and this alternative version of Poison Arrow, that's a bit more tempting, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what sells it, I guess. I mean, even the different version he does of Show Me at the start, where he's kind of talking the lines, then gets into the swing of actually singing it. It's slightly different version of that song, and it's quite nice to hear slightly different versions of any song. Whenever a band goes, you know what, we're gonna do a different version of our own song, it's kind of, all right, that'd be interesting to hear. So it's nice. It's like when you hear a good cover version. They don't happen very often, but occasionally you get a good cover version. Think, actually, that's as good as the original, and I like that. But
I'm very
when a band
about
covers their
cover
own
versions.
song, oh yeah,
an underrated art form.
Yeah, it is. There's so many good cover versions out there of so many good songs, but sometimes they're dodgy and you've got to ignore them.
I think that's kind of why I like them. You're aware that there's a risk factor.
That doesn't always pay off.
Exactly. Yeah, it makes it more impressive when they work because you know how very, very bad this could be.
Yes. I won't name and shame anyone, but there are many I could name and shame.
Yes.
I'm looking at the Manic Street Preachers especially.
Oh, man.
You're trying to think what song it was. Okay. Fair enough.
There's some that work. Their version of We Are All Bourgeois Now by McCarthy is excellent, but they've done some that were maybe could have stayed in the vaults. Yeah.
Definitely. Anyway,
yes. So just remind listeners, where can people find you?
You can find me on the My Favorite Film podcast, which is available on all good podcast suppliers, all good and bad podcast suppliers.
I've seen it on some shit ones.
It is, absolutely. Or you can go to the website, which is myfavoritefilm.com. And if you want to talk to me and tell me anything about anything you've heard, you like me, whatever, you hate me, at myfavfilm on Twitter, I'd be more than happy to get into a conversation about my love of the Manic Street Preachers. No. Of anything, go for it.
if you enjoyed this show, you can get a bonus episode every month on our Patreon, along with many other goodies, including my Doctor Who reviews and some new features that that Rob is tinkering with at the moment. I'm not sure if they'll have gone live by the time this comes out, but they're in the pipeline. That's all at www.patreon.com/The Geek Show. If you want to learn about what those new features are as they come, we are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TGS_The Geek Show. But until next week, that's been your lot from Pop Screen. I've been Graham.
And I've been Gav.
And we'll see you next week.